This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. Hello everyone, Andy Pickering here, and we have a very good show for you today. But before we get into it, need to shout out our new sponsor, Nexo. Yes indeed, are you ready to grow your wealth with the world's leading digital assets institution, Nexo? Well, you should be ready, because you can earn up to 12% on your digital assets with Nexo's high yield savings account. That's right. So treat yourself, treat your crypto, and treat your fiat with the industry's best crypto and fiat services, which include compounding interest paid out daily. There are 18 available cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, various stablecoins, and many more. And 3 fiat currencies are accepted, the euro, the pound, and USD. And Nexo has up to $375 million worth of insurance across all custodial assets. Top-ups and withdrawals are available at any time, and there are 0 fees for using the Nexo Earn Suite. So, are you ready to start earning? Of course you are. Simply go to nexo.io, and of course that is spelt NEXO.io. And now it's on with the show. My guest today is Tess Rinearson. Tess is the VP of Engineering at Interchain, where she leads the team responsible for Tendermint Core, which is one of the leading BFT engines for building blockchains. Hey, welcome to the show, Tess.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Look, it is a pleasure. So, look, just before we get into the wonderful world of Interchain, and we'll learn all about what you guys are building there, let's first learn a little bit about your good self. So I'd love it if you could please just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, your life story, and kind of path leading up to blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll spare you the whole life story, but
sure.
I will say that I got sucked into the world of blockchains back in 2015. So about 6 years ago, which is wild. Time absolutely flies in this industry, as I think everyone can attest. But yeah, I got brought into the world of blockchains when I joined a blockchain company called Chain. Back in 2015, you could call your blockchain company Chain, and that seemed like a reasonable thing to do. And Chain was a Bitcoin API initially, ended up building a whole bunch of other blockchain products, worked on our own layer 1, was very deep in the enterprise blockchain world, back in the blockchain, not Bitcoin days at one point. So got to, dabble in lots of different technologies and kind of up and down the stack in the space. And then that team was actually acquired into the Stellar ecosystem. And so I got to work in the Stellar ecosystem for a little while. And I stayed with that team actually until about 2 years ago, when I switched over and started working in the Cosmos space. And most of that time in the Cosmos space, I have been working at Interchain, which is focused on basically stewarding core technologies for the whole Cosmos ecosystem. I can talk a little bit more about Interchain and especially the Interchain Foundation in a moment. But yeah, that's my background. I have a background as a software engineer, and I've mostly been working as a software engineer or in the engineering leadership space, those kinds of roles in my time in the blockchain space.
Yes, indeed, Tess. And so, yeah, well, let's talk about Interchain then. So I think it says on the website something like, Interchain is responsible for stewarding foundational infrastructure for blockchain ecosystems. And obviously, this helps to secure billions of dollars in value across a variety of major blockchain projects, some of which you've mentioned, such as Cosmos. We'll talk more about that as well. But yeah, so let's talk about Interchain. So at a high level, I guess the vision is to create a new interconnected ecosystem, a new internet of blockchains. The Interchain, what does it all mean, Tess?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we say, the Internet of blockchains, we really do mean this multi-chain future where you have lots of application specific or, sort of smaller blockchains that are all optimized for their specific use cases, for their specific applications that can then come together, connect, and interoperate with one another. So that is what the Internet of blockchains is at a very high level. I think the phrase Internet of blockchains is both very visceral and also something that merits a little bit of explanation. And so what that really means from the ICF level is that we support the Cosmos ecosystem and the Cosmos stack. So the word Cosmos is a little bit overloaded actually, because we mean both the Cosmos Hub, which is a single blockchain network that's meant to act as sort of a router for lots of other blockchains that might want to connect to each other. So that's the Cosmos Hub. And then there's also the Cosmos Stack, which is a set of tools that any blockchain can use, regardless of whether they want to connect to the Cosmos Hub to build their own blockchains. And so in that Cosmos Stack, we have at the sort of most foundational layer, we have Tendermint Core, which you mentioned at the start of the session, which is a consensus algorithm and a consensus engine that's used to do state machine replication, create blocks, and replicate those blocks across a decentralized network and let that network come to consensus on these blocks. So that's what Tendermint Core is. It's sort of the most foundational piece, I would say. I'm also a little bit biased because I work most closely with the Tendermint Core team of all of the engineering teams. But that's what Tendermint Core is. Sort of the next layer up is the Cosmos SDK, which I've heard people describe as like a bit like Rails for the blockchain world, which is to say it's a framework and a set of tools that you can use to build your own blockchain, your own application specific blockchain. And it is super, super modular. So there's these different modules, different packages that people can use to sort of pick and choose what functionality they want for their own blockchains. The Cosmos SDK comes with Tendermint Core pretty much baked in, but if people wanted to use a different consensus mechanism like proof of authority or something like that, they're able to do that as well. So that's the Cosmos SDK. There's another piece that sort of works very closely with the Cosmos SDK, which is a protocol called the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. And this is a very, very low-level agnostic mechanism specification for just trading packets of information back and forth between blockchains. So you can use IBC to do things like atomic swaps, which I think most people think of as kind of like the most basic, but also most important thing that you can have for interoperability between two blockchains. So IBC can be used to build atomic swap functionality between two blockchains, but it's really could be used much more broadly than that. You can build all kinds of even like DeFi primitives and things like that into in an interoperable way if you want to use IBC. And then I mentioned the Cosmos Hub, which sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say that's in the Cosmos stack, but if you want to build a blockchain that's going to connect into this Internet of blockchains, the Cosmos stack, or the Cosmos Hub makes it really easy to do that because it's set up with IBC enabled automatically. Anyone who's using the SDK will also basically get IBC for free. You can just connect into the hub, and then through these like multi-hop transactions, you can be connected to any other blockchain that's connected to the hub, or connected to a blockchain that's connected to a blockchain to a hub. So you sort of get this picture, I think, of a very distributed network with different blockchains that can act as hubs, and we think that the Cosmos Hub is sort of the first of many hubs, actually.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense, Tess. And I guess I'd love to hear maybe a little bit from your perspective on, what kind of, I guess, mental model do you have for this kind of multi-chain world that, you're obviously building? Because, you talked about coming from, I guess, enterprise, a blockchain world. And, a few years ago, people would say Bitcoin, not blockchain, or blockchain, not Bitcoin, depending on which camp you were in. So yeah, I'd just love to kind of hear your thoughts on how you understand where you think the world is heading.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say like blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum and Cosmos, and I'm very much a pluralist. I don't think there's any reason why we won't have many blockchains. Actually, I will say this. I would say one thing that historically could be a limitation on the number of blockchains, that the world can reasonably support, is the fact that proof of work is so expensive. So environmentally expensive, uses so much energy.
Yeah.
And that actually is a huge motivation and justification for Tendermint Core, which is proof of stake, and just uses an amount of energy that is comparable to running any other web or server system. It doesn't burn energy as a part of its security model. And so that's really important. If you imagine a world with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of blockchains, you need something that's going to be more energy efficient than proof of work. And so I would say that's one limitation that we've worked pretty hard to unblock for the whole ecosystem. So that's one thing. But yeah, just going back to the question. I'm very much a pluralist. I think that different blockchains, tune different parameters for different use cases. They should be able to do that. Blockchains should have a certain level of sovereignty, so they have some, at least some degree of control over like what blocks get validated. If one network makes a bunch of decisions, that's not necessarily going to impact another. I think that's an important quality as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that the reality is that one of the things I've started to see over the last year or two, and like I said, I've been in the space for a while, and I've thrown spaghetti at the wall many times. But one of the trends that I'm really excited about has been these tokens that are targeted at relatively small audiences. So I think a lot of the post-Bitcoin blockchains, including Cosmos and the Cosmos Hub, have really grand major visions that sort of target the world as their audience. And I've been really excited to see projects that are targeted towards much smaller audiences. So like creator tokens, I think are a very cool thing. You can sort of rally a community around a single person, and that community can have their own token and their own little economy, even in some ways. Another project that I'm super excited about is a project in the Cosmos ecosystem. Actually, they use the Cosmos stack. They connect in to the Cosmos Hub, and that project is called Region, or the Region Network. And their whole thing is about creating incentives for farmers who want to farm using regenerative practices. So obviously, that's like a relatively small slice of an audience compared to like the whole world. But I think what they're doing is really cool, and that's kind of the level of targeting that I think we're starting to see emerge. And I'm quite bullish on that as like the use case that's actually going to, or like the set of long tail use cases that are really going to make blockchains popular in the world.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense to me, Tess, and I think one of the points that you're getting at there as well is if you talk about these chains that are for maybe smaller communities or smaller niche use cases, then there's less of a need for a really intensive, decentralized proof of work blockchain with all the kind of the censorship resistance that comes with that. It's I guess what I'm saying is there's a scale of decentralization, right? And it's still important, but it's slightly less important when you're talking about these smaller communities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I want to be clear, first of all, I think that proof of stake is a huge family of different consensus options. And there certainly are proof of stake algorithms that have, similar guarantees around censorship resistance to proof of work. But I think that, one thing that is very cool about having lots of smaller, more local networks, so to speak, is that you could have a system where you have members of your community who are also your validators, who are your block producers. And that is, I think, a very cool thing Again, going back to sort of the sovereignty, the degree to which a community might own their monetary system. I think that's a very cool thing compared to something like Bitcoin's proof of work, which is so global, controlled by miners from who knows where. There's a lot of. I mean, I think Bitcoin is great. Don't get me wrong, but that's a very different use case than what you want for your small community token.
For sure. Well, and just while we're talking about a proof of stake, I'd love it, Tess, if you could maybe, just kind of bring us up to speed at a high level. Sure, just in terms of where are we at in terms of deploying all these different proof of stake networks. Of course, obviously, Ethereum is in that slow transition towards a proof of stake. What you guys are doing with Cosmos is proof of stake. Is proof of stake proven at scale at this point, or are we still sort of in that transition?
I think it's pretty proven. I mean, the number of networks we've seen who are using proof of stake, obviously it'll be a huge milestone when Ethereum officially makes the transition, and I'm so excited to see that happen. But we're seeing tons of networks using proof of stake, and most new networks that launch these days use proof of stake, in one way or another.
Yes.
And so I think it is becoming, the gold standard way to do consensus on a new network. I think there will always be room in the world for like one or two great proof of work networks. Like I said, I think Bitcoin is great. I think it's great at what it does. But I'm really happy that most networks are choosing to do something that's a little more ecologically straightforward, let's say.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's yeah. So that's what I'd say about it, sort of overall. The other thing that I'm excited to see in the space with proof of stake is that there's so many different algorithms and so many different solutions that are coming out, and they make different optimizations. They sort of are tuned for, again, different use cases and different. They'll make different trade-offs around performance or the number of block producers or the complexity of how many different kinds of nodes you need to run in your system for the load on a single individual node. So I really like, maybe you're sensing a theme in this conversation, I really like this world where people can choose the best technology for themselves and for their use case, and aren't locked into sort of choosing just doing exactly the same thing that everyone else is doing that may not be the best thing for them. So that's sort of the trend I've noticed in the space overall. I'm super, super happy to see it. On the Tendermint Core side, we're really focused at the moment on making Tendermint as stable and secure and usable as possible, really within the current paradigm of proof of stake algorithms. So we're doing a lot of things like refactoring different pieces for performance and making improvements to components like the mempool, which is what is responsible basically for like gathering transactions and then putting them into blocks. And we're making a big change to that in our next release, where applications and validators can prioritize different transactions over others, which will be really important for networks to run in an optimal way when they're under load. So we're doing that kind of thing. We're sort of refining, tweaking, polishing Tendermint Core as it is. The next set of things that we're looking into and looking at really are more aligned with this like multi-chain future that we're talking about earlier with the interchain itself. And one thing that we've noticed as, again, more and more proof of stake networks proliferate is that it's often challenging for validators to run multiple chains at once. And it's really important that you have lots of validators on your network, and that these validators are, at least many of them are experts and professionals, and they know what we're doing, or they know what they're doing. But we know that the complexity of running these networks basically scales exponentially as you add new chains. And so for a professional validator who might be validating or block producing on a dozen different chains, they might find that it's not a no-brainer choice to add support for a new project, right? And so we want to make that decision way easier and say, look, it's going to be really easy to start validating on an additional chain. And there's a few different ways we could get there. We're sort of exploring all of them right now. It's quite early days. But the range of solutions ranges from actually fiddling with the consensus algorithm itself. And, there's sort of a new world called heterogeneous consensus, where you have different validators, validating on different networks and constantly swapping around and playing different roles and things like that. So that would be sort of a very algorithmically oriented way to modify and change Tendermint to be native to this new multi-chain world. There's also approaches where you sort of leave the consensus algorithm as it is intact and just find ways to integrate IBC or another interoperability protocol much more closely, sort of into the the binary that's running that algorithm. So I don't know if that distinction makes sense, but that's where we're at with Tendermint Core right now. We're really looking to this multi-chain future, scoping it out, still making decisions. There's been a ton of really interesting research in the space, and that's roughly where we're headed. But there's definitely still a lot of open questions.
Of course, there are always many open questions in a blockchain, and but let's keep going on Tendermint, Tess. So I think that it'd be good for me to understand what you guys are building, and of course for the listeners as well. So I'm just looking through the website at the moment, and I can see Kyle Samani, who of course is one of the partners at Coin Capital. He describes a Tendermint as the gold standard in the construction of proof of stake consensus algorithms, so that's a nice compliment. But I think it could be good, Tess, just to maybe understand some of the. I'm sure there are some use cases that you guys are kind of optimizing for, or you have in mind at least when you're building out Tendermint Core, right? So do you want to maybe just pick a couple that you think are particularly well suited to Tendermint Core and kind of describe the progress there?
Yeah, so I would say that Tendermint Core is a great general purpose proof of stake consensus algorithm. Most blockchain networks will do really well with something like Tendermint Core. And I think the reason why it's, people think of it as the gold standard, or some people think of it as the gold standard, is that it's one of the most mature proof of stake algorithms out there. It's the Cosmos network has been around for a few years, which has always been running Tendermint. The Tendermint project started in something like, I think it was 2014. So it's about 7 years old now. So it's just been around for a while, and there's a lot of work that's gone into battle testing it. So, one thing that I believe was pioneered by Tendermint Core, this predates my involvement in the project actually, so I can't say for sure. But one thing that I believe was pioneered by the Tendermint Core team was actually this incentivized testnet model. And so that first one was called, I think it was called either Game of Stakes or Game of Zones. We've run incentivized testnets with both names, but basically creating this kind of gamified model where validators, or people who think they might want to be validators, are invited to participate in the network, and they earn tokens for, first of all, just participating in the incentivized testnet, running a validator. They get tokens for the more uptime they have and things like that. But the thing that's really exciting about these incentivized testnets is that there's a series of attacks or failure modes that are laid out. And we say, if anyone can successfully execute this attack on this network, you get a huge bounty. And so people are really incentivized to hit the network hard. There's usually, hundreds of participants who are validating, and probably more who are trying to attack it. So that's one thing that we've done to guarantee, we've done this process several times over the course of many years. So that's one thing that we've done to guarantee a lot of confidence in the safety and security of the algorithm. There's also been a lot of work done to ensure that the algorithm is correct. So there's a whole field in computer science called formal verification, where you can basically verify that your algorithm is going to do what it says it does. So this is different from testing, where you test the implementation of that algorithm or verify that the way you've implemented the algorithm is correct. This actually kind of tests the concepts that you're working with and says, okay, are all of your assumptions correct? And so you actually build up these proofs in like a mathematical sense that you can execute and verify that the algorithm is correct. So a lot of work has gone into verifying that the Tendermint Core algorithm is correct, that it will do what it says it does. And the really cool thing about that process actually is that as a side effect of the formal verification process, you can generate these models that sort of are, again, like mathematical models of how the system is supposed to work. And then from those models, you can generate test cases for your implementation. So you can say, okay, the model specified by this algorithm says that if you put in A, you should get B. And then you can take A and B and feed them into your implementation. And the implementation can say, okay, I took A and yep, I got B. And so you can also use that model to verify that, not only is the algorithm right, but the implementation is consistent with that algorithm. I know this is kind of nerdy stuff, but I get into it just to say, this is something that people have been working on for years, and there's a lot of deep work that has gone into ensuring that this algorithm is correct. And I think the reason why people like Tendermint Core is because it has been so tested. It has been, verified in all these different ways. It's been audited many times. It's really just a pretty mature and highly trusted solution in the space, and that means a lot, in the blockchain space, which, as moves at the speed of light. Things pop up very quickly and can sometimes be adopted very quickly. And so Tendermint Core is something that is stable. We're trying to make it more usable, make sure that it can support as many use cases as possible. But I think that is actually the main feature of Tendermint Core, is just that it is so reliable.
Fantastic stuff, Tess. Thank you for that. Wonderfully explained. And I guess just as we finish off this part of the podcast, maybe from a sort of a big picture view, how do you understand, I guess, the kind of the state of things at the moment in terms of like what metrics are you watching in terms of, I guess, like new developers coming and working on the different projects around your ecosystem, new projects building on Tendermint. I think Binance Dex is on there, and just kind of transaction counts and all that kind of stuff. Where do you think we are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that, there's one interesting thing about building these tools in this very open source way, is that we often don't actually know how many people are using the technology. If we were running, like in the classic like web service model, you have metrics, you can see how many people are hitting your server or what the load looks like. And when you're just sort of releasing open source software into the world, you often don't actually know. And so I will say that we have definitely had the experience where someone pops into our Discord and starts asking questions, and we're like, wait a minute, you guys are using Tendermint, or wait, you're using IBC? So that's always a very fun experience. But I just preface all this to say that like we're working on doing more work around community surveys and getting things out to users, but we actually don't have great metrics around the sheer number of users who are using the Cosmos stack. To go back to that metaphor that concept that I introduced earlier. What we do have more insight into is the number of chains that are connecting into the interchain through the Cosmos hub or through another network. But in that case, we can kind of inspect the network a little bit because it's live. We could look at it, and we're looking at right now it's dozens of blockchains that are connected to the Cosmos hub, but our hope is that in a year or two, it's thousands or tens of thousands of blockchains that are connected into the Cosmos hub that are all serving really cool, unique use cases and are perhaps optimized and tuned in their own ways and making their own trade-offs. So that's really, excuse me, that's really the number that we're looking at. Both the best metric that we have in terms of what we can see and look at, but also the best metric in terms of like, that's what it means to have a multi-chain future, and that's what it means to have the interchain. So that's really what we're tracking most closely.
Fantastic, Tess. All right. Well, just before we go to a break, and then we'll come back and finish off with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. But yeah, hey, don't be afraid. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's actually a lot of fun. You'll enjoy yourself. Trust me. But Tess,
all right, I'm only quaking in my boots a little bit.
Okay, good. Well, I was fascinated to learn also that you are the author of Bitcoin Explained with Emoji. So Emoji, this is a piece published on Medium back in 2017. And I have a vague memory. I'm pretty sure that I read this way back in the day in 2017, because it's a reasonably popular Medium piece, or it was at the time. So yeah, just kind of curious as to your reflections on writing that piece, and does it still hold up today? I've just been flicking through it. It looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, so I actually initially, I published it on Medium in 2017, but I actually wrote the bulk of it in 2015. So it's even older than that.
Wow.
And I wrote it initially as a talk that I gave at the MIT Media Lab to Girls Who Code, which is a summer program for high school girls who are interested in computer science, which is sort of where I got the idea to do the emoji thing. I was like, I want to make this fun. High school girls are a very discerning audience, so you really gotta work for them a little bit. So that was the genesis of that work. But the funny thing that I'll say that I will say that I think it's held up just fine. But the reason it's held up fine is that it's also incomplete. So when I gave the talk, I sort of gave it in 3 sections, where I was like, here's some basics about what a blockchain is and like why it's a cool thing. Here's a bunch of stuff about the internals of the Bitcoin blockchain specifically, which I think is so important to anyone who wants to work in the space, to have some sense of how a UTXO works and how public key crypto works. That stuff is just really, I think, really foundational and important. So I was really happy to get into that. And then in the talk, when I gave it in 2015, I talked about use cases for blockchains and like, this is what we're going to see people do with them. And by 2017, I'd basically lost all my confidence in what I thought the blockchain world was going to look like, or what the use cases were going to be. It was just there were just so many things happening. My own thesis about what a blockchain was for was changing on almost like a quarterly basis. And so I even in the blog post, I say this is going to be 3 parts. Part 1 is Part 1 and 2 are some basics, and then part 3 is about what blockchains are for. And just because my feelings have shifted so much over time, I've basically found it impossible to finish the series. I will say that I have kind of coalesced my feelings and my opinions around this idea that I shared with you earlier around application-specific blockchains and what that means and why that's exciting. So I really have gained a lot more confidence in that particular idea. But yeah, I would just say that I think that piece has held up because it's focused on technological foundations rather than making predictions about the future or use cases, for better or worse.
Yes, indeed. And look, I'll try and put a link to part 1 and part 2. Part 3, as I understand it, Tess, is still to come. But we'll put links in the show notes.
Someday.
We'll put links in the show notes to part 1 and 2, depending on where you're listening to this, or you can simply just Google Bitcoin Explained with Emoji, and I'm sure those essays will come up. All right, well, let's go to a very quick break, and then we'll come back and finish off with the Crypto Conversation Hot Take Round.
Grow your wealth with the world's leading digital assets institution, Nexo. Earn up to 12% on your digital assets with Nexo's high yield savings account. Treat yourself, your crypto and fiat with the industry best crypto and fiat services, featuring compounding interest paid out daily, 18 available cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, stablecoins, and more. 3 fiat currencies are accepted: Euro, Pounds, and USD. Up to $375 million insurance on all custodial assets, top-ups and withdrawals available at any time, and 0 fees for using Nexo Earn Suite. Start earning at nexo.io. That's nexo.io.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Tess Rinearson. Tess is the VP of Engineering at Interchain, where she leads the team responsible for Tendermint Core. And Tess, I like to finish each Crypto Conversation podcast with a very quick round of Crypto Conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
I certainly am.
All right, just want your hot takes, Jess, just quick, snappy answers. Take your best shot. We'll have some fun. Here we go. I know the answer to this first one, but where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
I am certainly a pluralist. I think lots of coins for lots of different use cases.
Absolutely. Very sensible answer.
Including Bitcoin, I should say. Including
Absolutely.
Bitcoin. I'm not anti-Bitcoin in any way.
Of course. All right. Well, Tess, what would you say is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
I would say my firmest conviction crypto opinion is actually what we were just talking about a moment ago around, lots of, actually, it's very pluralist. Lots of blockchains, tuned for different purposes.
Makes sense. Okay, well, here's a curveball for you then, Tess. UBI as a potential fix for AI-induced automation, or as a potential fix for some kind of future dystopian wealth inequality in the world. UBI, good idea or bad idea?
I think it's probably a good idea. It's definitely a very plausible idea. I'll put it that way.
Yep, and probably will run on blockchain.
Very possible.
All right, well, Tess, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So big question, but cast your mind's eye forward. Blockchain, Tendermint, whatever you like, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like such a broken record, but really I think that we're going to have lots of applications that meet real world use cases and meet real people, not crypto nerds, but real, normal, well-adjusted people.
Yes.
Where they are in their lives, solving problems that they actually face. And again, we're going to get there through applications that really target those people and are running on blockchains that are built to support those applications.
And we'll know we get there when those normal, well-adjusted people don't really have any idea that they're interacting with a blockchain, right?
Absolutely. This has actually been one of the big questions I've had the whole time I've been in the space, which is like, how much is a normal person going to understand about a blockchain? And I think about it in terms of the internet. People know it's there, but they don't necessarily, and they think about it definitely as a concept, but they don't know that much about the internals. And so I think we're probably going to see something like that. But it's interesting you say that, just because that has been one of the big questions on my mind the whole time I've been in the space.
Yep, 100%. Okay, well, look, on a similar note, Tess, William Gibson said, of course, that the future is already here. It is just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think this is truly a hot take because I haven't reasoned all the way through this, but you're getting me at my hottest take. I think a lot of the stuff around zero knowledge proofs and other, cutting edge cryptography exists, and it's being slowly integrated into different projects, and we're sort of seeing it proliferate through the space. I think any kind of privacy technology can be a double-edged sword for sure. But I think that is something that is in the future and has not been evenly distributed yet.
I love it. All right. Time to zoom out, time to get a little bit weird. Tess, what do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see utopia or dystopia?
Oh my goodness.
I did say weird.
Yeah, I think we have it in us for utopia, but we're going to have to get our act together. We're going to have to figure out how to take care of the earth. We're going to have to figure out how to communicate and cooperate much better. We're going to have to deal with, the polarization that we're seeing in a lot of parts of the world. But if we can do all of that, the small stuff, I think that we have a very good shot at utopia.
Well, didn't Jack Dorsey just today, didn't he say to Kathy Wood and Elon Musk that he was very confident, or hopeful at least, that Bitcoin itself would usher in world peace on a long enough time frame?
Yeah, I mean, I did see some tweets about that. I didn't get to watch the session, unfortunately. But I do think that there are, in these technologies, actually, we have some great tools for human coordination, for building systems that use or minimize trust in the right ways. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to oversell the promise of blockchain technology, but I think it gives us some really, really great tools.
Couldn't agree more. Let's finish this off, Tess. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction book, a film, show, or universe?
Let me think about that. I think the science fiction book that just like blew my mind the most when I first read it, which was about 10 years ago, or maybe more than that, actually. I was in it's been a while, but is Anathema by Neil Stephenson. I actually was traveling when I read it, and I completely disappeared from my trip so I could finish that incredible book. I won't spoil anything for anyone, but it's a really good one. It took me about 200 pages to really get into it, but once I did, it was like I was in a different world. It was incredible.
Yeah, well, he is one of the classic speculative or science fiction authors. So yes, very pleased to hear that. All right, Tess, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for talking to us today. Nothing else to say really except to hand the metaphorical microphone back to you. Please tell the people where they can go to find you on Twitter, and where they should go to learn more about Tendermint, Interchain, etc., etc.
So I'm on Twitter at _TessR. And the Interchain Foundation's website is interchain.io.
Fantastic. This has been a lot of fun, Tess. Thank you very much. We'll watch with interest to see how you guys progress. But for now, all the best, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, that's today's show. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. And if you want to get at me, just drop me an email, andy@bravenewcoin.com. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. This was the Crypto Conversation for